It's time now to take a look at what's going on in politics. Joining us with all the very latest is our Deputy Prime Minister, David Seymour. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Look, it's great to be with you. Look, I want to go there first off with the Regulatory Standards Bill. Bit of a cacophony of noise in the media in the past week with good old Winston Peters. Can you give us a bit of a lowdown as to actually what's going on there?
Well, first of all, I mean, the Regulatory Standards Bill is designed to make sure that politicians are open and transparent about the effect of rules that they make. So, to give you one example, churches up and down New Zealand in the last decade have been affected and face huge costs because of the earthquake strengthening laws. I think it's important if the government makes a law like that, we ensure that everybody knows that that's what's happening, that they will face these costs from a law made by the government. That's all we're trying to do. There's been a lot of media commentary. Winston Peters said he was going to campaign to get rid of this bill. I just said, well, look, the ACT Party's worked for 20 years to get this bill passed. We did that a couple of weeks ago. We're not really going to get rid of it. So we're not going to do that. And then I said, well, look, if he wants to do that, he'd have to go with Labor because the Labor Party want to get rid of the Regulatory Standards Bill. Then, of course, the media, as recently as this morning, have been trying to say, oh, there's a big fight in the coalition. And, because these journalists are just so excited about conflict. It's easier for them to report on conflict than it is on actually trying to improve policy, is my humble opinion.
With that being said, then, I mean, look, and not to get into race specifics here, but you did outline in some ways how this regulatory standards bill could be a positive. Let's say for our Pacific community, for those listening this morning, how it actually impacts them.
Well, you take a rule that the government wants to make. I mean, the earthquake laws were a classic example. A lot of buildings had to be either upgraded at great expense, or they had to be, pulled down, or they couldn't be occupied. It just meant that there were fewer places that people could live, work, worship, whatever. Now, there was, in fairness, back in 2016 when that law was passed, there were warnings, but they weren't taken seriously. I was the only person that voted against the law out of the whole parliament. And my point is, if politicians have to be more honest about the costs they're putting on people, we'll get better laws. So that's one example, the earthquake laws. I'll give you another example. People that run daycares or early childhood education, very frustrated at the red tape and regulations, the number of forms they have to fill out, the amount of compliance. I'm trying to fix that now. But, when you tie people up in red tape, when you say that, for example, you have to keep 19 different documents in your drawer to run a daycare centre, people spend more time doing documents and less time working to look after children. And that means it's more expensive to get daycare. That means that people find it harder to balance their budgets and their time with working. So, there's lots of examples all through life where people are spending more time filling out forms and less time actually doing the stuff they want to do for themselves and their families. And the Regulatory Standards Act is designed that if politicians are going to make a law that takes up your time, uses up your property, makes you poorer, they at least have to tell you that they can still do it, but they at least have to tell you.
Look, I hate to ask the mainstream narrative here, but it'd be remiss of me not to. So there is nothing to be concerned about with the coalition. There's no fractures, nothing.
No. I mean, I'll give you just an interesting fact, I think. This government's been going for 2 years. We've got one more year to go out of three. We've already passed more legislation than any other government has passed in 3 years. We've done that in the first two. Now, if this government is all, dysfunctional and infighting and doesn't work and all the rest, well, how is it possible that we've managed to pass more laws than any other government? And not just we've done it in less time, in a whole year, with a whole year to spare. So that to me says that this government's obviously getting on and getting stuff done.
But Winston is in classic campaign mode now, is he not?
Yeah, but Winston's Winston. I mean, love him, hate him, whatever. I come with a very different mission. The ACT Party is there driving change in the resource management law, the earthquake regulations, the regulatory standards bill, the resource management changes, the firearm laws, getting medicines in more easily with the rule of two. I mean, we're here to make serious change to the direction of New Zealand. Other people can do their own thing.
Yeah, certainly. Look, just very quickly on the Uber situation, the Supreme Court threw out the Uber appeal against treating drivers as employees. What do you make of that, and what action, say, is the Workplace Relations Minister, Brooke Van Velden, doing in this space?
Well, you got to respect the court, right? I mean, they made their finding. That's what they think the law means, and that's the law that we got to respect it. But equally, our government and Brooke Van Velden, who's my deputy in Act and also the Workplace Relations Minister, we think that contracting is an important option for a lot of people. A lot of people have different lifestyles. They want the flexibility of contracting for Uber or whatever the company is. Now, we're going to pass a law soon that will basically say, look, whatever the Supreme Court said, if you pass these four tests, then you are a contractor. And that way, if you want a contract, you can, but you've got to know what you're signing. You've got to have responsibility for your hours. You've got to have flexibility. If you pass the test, then you can do it. And if you don't want to be a contractor, then you can get a normal job. But I think it should be clear who's a contractor and who's not, and the government's going to pass a law that makes it clear with four tests.
Right. Okay. And with that being said, though, I mean, the drivers at the centre of this, they say this is a win. This is a recognition, not just for New Zealand, but abroad too. Do you think that, there is some merit to what they're saying here in terms of, we should have a right to perhaps be entitled to such things? Or do you think it does more harm than good?
Well, I mean, I would just say that there must be thousands of Uber drivers and people working in similar sort of jobs, delivery and so on. Like, everyone's listening to what four people are saying. I don't know that everyone thinks that, because if all contractors are opposed to contracting, are we really saying that none of the contractors could get another job, so they had to contract? I suspect there'll be a lot of people there who actually want to be contractors. They appreciate the flexibility of it. On the other hand, if you say that contracting is basically illegal, everyone's got to be an employee. So you've got to do holiday pay, you've got to do time and lieu, you've got to do, what do you call it, a PG, a personal grievance, if the person gets upset and wants to leave. Sure, okay, you can have all of that. But I guarantee you that there will be some businesses and some opportunities that won't exist because they can't work with those requirements. So really, like a lot of things, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but why wouldn't you let other people have the choice if that's what they want?
Sure, I see the case that you're making. Look, just very quickly, the National Party, they announced their KiwiSaver policy, lifting contributions. What do you make of it? What's the ACT Party's stance on this?
Well, I can understand it. I mean, everyone wants to see people retiring with money in the bank, and everyone wants to see New Zealand with more savings, because savings can be invested in capital assets, and that means that people have more machinery to work with and more productive jobs, and they get paid more. So you can understand what they're trying to do. The only thing I would ask is, where will the extra money come from? For example, if you say to an employer, you now have to put aside 6% for KiwiSaver, is the employer going to say, oh, yeah, that's okay, fine, we'll just pay extra? Or are they going to say at your next wage negotiation, oh, sorry, we can't really put your wages up this time because we've had to put the money into KiwiSaver? So, it may be that you actually get a lower salary because of this. And then they're also saying that as an employee, you have to make a bigger contribution. I say, well, where's that money going to come from? And if it means that, people that were paying off their mortgage have to reduce their mortgage payments, or people that are having a tough month put more money on their credit card and pay interest on that, or if it means that someone who was a tradie that wanted to go out by themselves and buy their own tool and their own van, has all their money tied up in KiwiSaver instead of savings. So I just asked the question, on the employer side and the employee side, where does the money actually come from? That's all I'd say.
Fair point. Fair point. Look, we've seen over the weekend a bit of, Nationals released its first policy ahead of election. The Labour Party, to no surprise, has rolled out the red carpet to some of their selections. That are, again, no surprise. What can we expect from the ACT Party? Are we expecting any campaign slogans, any new policy coming soon?
I think everyone just deserves a summer break and a Merry Christmas. We have an election once every 3 years. We don't need to campaign for 2 out of 3 years. No, we're very excited about 2026, and I think it's going to be a bit of a surprise, and we're going to show really well. So we are preparing for it, but let's just give everyone a summer break first.
Fair enough. I'll tell you, just final one for you. Te Pāti Māori, I'm sure they need a bit of a break themselves after the internal utter chaos engulfing the party. What do you make of it?
Well, you've got to have a mission that's bigger than yourself. So, I'm in politics basically because I think if government does less and people have more choices and more of their own money and less red tape and regulations, then people will use their creativity and we'll have a better country. So, like charter schools, I see Sisters United starting up a charter school. I think that's awesome. I think that's what you get with freedom. Now, that's my mission. More freedom, more choices, more flourishing, more opportunity, happier people. What is the Maori Party's mission? It just seems to be about themselves, trying to get on TikTok and showing who's more important than who, and being angry about race. And I just, because they don't stand for anything else, they inevitably end up attacking each other. So look, I'm not surprised, to be honest.